Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. One key idea, and you might also say character, that comes up immediately in Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra is what in German they call the Ubermench, and it's been translated in many ways. This particular edition has Superman, but Overman, Beyond Man, all sorts of ways. And we ought to point out that Mensch doesn't mean man specifically in terms of gender. It means human beings. So we're talking about a creature or a being that in some way is beyond or above. Über can mean both of those things. Beyond humanity as we know it. It's still yet connected to humanity in important ways, as we're going to see. Zarathustra himself is not the Ubermensch, and Nietzsche doesn't present himself as being the Ubermensch either. And I mentioned that you could talk about it as a character. It's not a character who actually shows up on the scene in the, whatever you want to call this. You could call it a sort of novel in a way by comparison to Nietzsche's other works, or an episodic story or whatever. And it's not entirely clear who precisely the Ubermensch is supposed to be, and that's the way Nietzsche wants it. So if you're like immediately trying to latch on to, well, who's the Ubermensch these days? Maybe I'm the Ubermensch. You're not the Ubermensch, right? Nietzsche would tell you. If you have to ask, it's not you. So let's talk about what Nietzsche actually does tell us about the Ubermensch, and especially about the human relationship to this whatever it happens to be. Sort of a living God on earth, except in a time when gods no longer have the sway that they do. So the Ubermensch is presented as someone who is yet to come. And Zarathustra could be likened, if you want to draw analogies, to John the Baptist and Jesus in the New Testament. I think that's definitely a parallel that he intends. And he tells this crowd very early on in the prologue that he is here to teach the Superman. I teach you the Superman. And then he goes on in a theme that we're going to explore. Man is something that should be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? So what is the Ubermensch then? Something that is beyond humanity, but is coming from humanity in some way as yet to be determined, although Nietzsche gives us plenty of advice about how we might bring this about. He tells us that the Superman is beyond humanity in the way that humanity is beyond the other animals. And, there's the animals in general, and then he's got this discussion of the worm. He says, you made your way from worm to man, and much in you is still worm. Once you were apes, even now man is more of an ape than any ape. He who is the wisest among you, he is only a discord and hybrid of plant, so a vegetative state, respiration, eating, growth, excreting things, and of a ghost. But do I bid you to become ghosts or plants? No, I teach you the Superman. So the Superman would be beyond the animality that we still have. And human beings, we should pause on this, are a weird kind of animal, according to Nietzsche. We are animals, and we have instincts and drives like all the rest, but ours are weaker, more open to interpretation, and we bring about all sorts of things that, in effect, transform our nature and render us no longer just a naked ape, right? But rather make us into a different kind of animal, a more dangerous type of animal, but also one that can live within, vast herds as well. So the Superman is going to be beyond that. And he also tells us that the Superman is the meaning of the earth. So what does he mean by that? That's a little cryptic. The meaning of the earth, the meaning of this world that we live in, which means that we don't fully grasp what the meaning of human existence or the larger, ecosystem that we belong to, we don't fully grasp what it is. We could imagine that we do, but we would be mistaken because of that. And this is the source of many human errors. According to Nietzsche, we make ourselves much more important than we are, or we make, the environment more important than it is. And we don't recognize that it's the Superman, according to Zarathustra, who is the meaning of the earth. He says the Superman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say the Superman shall be the meaning of the earth. The Superman is not yet the meaning of the earth, which implies that there's a certain lack of meaning, but this will be made clear when the Superman shows up for those of us who are able to understand this being. Now, why talk about the earth? Why not talk about, say, the cosmos or God or something like that? According to Nietzsche, we are now in an age where the highest values have devalued themselves. So he talks about the death of God, for example, which is another topic that we'll get to eventually. The Superman is not supposed to be simply a replacement for the Judeo-Christian God or anything along those sort of lines, some sort of transcendent value, the apex of the pyramid under which everything else finds its rightful place. This is supposed to represent a different way of looking at things, a way of viewing things with no afterlife, no transcendent supernatural, just the world that we actually have. And the Superman should be the meaning, the sense of that. He also talks about another key feature of the Superman, something that the ancients would have called great souledness, or to use the Latinate translation, magnanimity, megalopsuchein, right? To have a sort of great soul is the way that Aristotle talks about it. We often translate this as sort of pride, but pride doesn't adequately capture this. The person who is great-souled is, in a certain respect, beyond the rest of us. He or she is above us, demands great honors from those who are able to give it, not so much from the common people, because they know they deserve it. They're not vain. They're not, puffing up their accomplishments or anything like that. They know they're the thing, right? And in how Nietzsche describes it in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, we are all sort of like polluted rivers. He talks about man, here we go. What does your body say about your soul? Is your soul not poverty and dirt and a miserable ease? In truth, man is a polluted river. And then he says, well, a polluted river, if it flows into the sea can take that pollution and dissipate it, and it won't be an issue anymore. We can't do that ourselves. We're stuck with our guilty consciences and our consciousness of our failings and our inability to measure up to these sort of high standards. But the Superman can take all of that on and allow us to find a kind of meaning. He also talks about it as a sea in which your great contempt can go under as well. And that's part of why he's teaching the Superman. The last metaphor that he has in this prologue about the Superman and he says this in several different places, is that he is like lightning, or rather he is the lightning. And we could say, well, what does that mean to be lightning? Well, lightning is illuminative, but it's not illuminative the way a lamp is, where it stays on for, however long we want. It comes and goes as it's going to. And we get a flash and we can suddenly see everything illuminated, and then it's gone. And so I think that is what he's suggesting there. Now, that's what he's saying about the Superman. What about the rest of us? What about the human beings that Zarathustra is preaching to? So here we're talking about the human relation to the Superman. And, we could imagine a number of different relations beyond what Nietzsche describes. We could ignore the Superman. We could say, oh, we don't want people like that. Let's pull him down. If we see anybody acting like that, let's forget about this. But Nietzsche says, no, there's another possibility for us. And he's sketching this out as the right way to look at things. So, again, he tells us that the human being is between the animal on the one hand and the Superman on the other hand. So he says that, man to the Superman is going to be a laughing stock or painful embarrassment. Why? Because that is what the ape is to us. So there's a sort of leveling up, you could say, that's going on. But then he also says that we have a vital role to play. He says that we are, and he's using this metaphor of the tightrope walker, we are a rope fastened between animal and Superman, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous going across, a dangerous wayfaring, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous shuddering and staying still. And then he goes on and he says, what is great in humanity is that the person is a bridge and not a goal. What can be loved in man is that he's a going across and a downgoing. So our true value, according to this, doesn't lie in ourselves or in humanity with a capital H or anything along those lines. It lies in the fact that we have the potential, maybe not a realized potential in all cases, but a potential to bridge between the animal and the superhuman. Again, we might think of Aristotle and his discussion in Politics, Book 1, where he says that the person who can be entirely on his own must either be an animal or a god. Human beings are built to live within communities and relationships, and that's where we work out our stuff. Right? So there is the potential for us to be, in some respect, not necessarily divine in the old-fashioned sense, but to be beyond the human. It won't be realized in the case of most or perhaps all of us, but we can be a rope over an abyss of meaninglessness, of nothingness, a bridge to something else. So how is this accomplished? He tells us that humanity is something to be overcome. Every other animal, he says, has managed to produce something beyond itself, something greater than itself. And, if you think about evolution, right? You start out with this very simple stuff and it gets greater and greater and greater. Now, we have jokes these days where we say, well, what did the T-Rex turn into? Chickens, But in some respect, it's something new. It's something beyond itself, right? Are we the apex? Are we where it's supposed to stop? That's a question that Nietzsche and so many other people were asking themselves at the time. Is this it? Because if this is it, well, I'm not so sure that this is the pinnacle of evolution or development or anything like that. Shouldn't we try to produce something that would be superhuman, something that would be beyond us? That's what Nietzsche thinks that we ought to do. And how would this work? He says that the person, the human being, has a lot of different ways in which they can do this. But the key thing to say here is that it's going to require a kind of generosity or not counting the cost, a commitment on one's part to not expect to even see the Superman and to have some sort of reward thereby, but just to do exactly what one is supposed to do and thereby pave the way without expecting to reap the benefits. So he says, I love those who do not know how to live, except their lives be a down-going, for they are the ones who are going across. Übergehen, as the commentator points out, is a German term which can mean many different things, including both the going down and going across, and also destruction. So what does this look like? He says, I love those who do not first seek beyond the stars for reasons to go down and be sacrifices, but who sacrifice themselves to the earth. Why? Not just to sacrifice themselves to the earth, not to be part of some cyclical process, but that the earth may one day belong to the Superman. I love him, he goes on, who lives for knowledge and who wants knowledge, that one day the Superman may live. By desiring knowledge, by producing knowledge, one is hastening the way to the Superman. And he says, by doing this, though, he wills his own downfall. Then he says, I love him who works and invents, that he may build a house for the Superman and prepare earth, animals, and plants for him. For thus he wills his own downfall. He says, I love him who loves his virtue, for virtue is to will downfall and an arrow of longing. It's a very different conception of virtue, of genuine virtue that Nietzsche has. When we think about eudaimonistic ethics, we say, oh, well, virtue is its own reward, and, whether we're looking at Aristotelian or Platonic or Stoic or Christian or whatever sort of view on virtue like that, Nietzsche says, no, virtue is something that if you really have it, it consumes you. Your generosity or your justice or your courage will, in fact, consume you, perhaps even bring about your downfall. And by doing so, it brings about, in some unexplained way, the advent of the Superman. And so he gives you a whole bunch of examples of this. One that I particularly like is where he says, I love him who throws golden words in advance of his deeds and always performs more than he promised, for he wills his own downfall. He goes on and he says, I love him who justifies the men of the future and redeems the men of the past, for he wants to perish by the men of the present. There are many different modes by which a human being would be the bridge to bring about the Superman, but all of them would demand a kind of absolute commitment that is not taking its cues solely from society or past traditions or even from Nietzsche himself. This would be something that one would have to work out for oneself to bring about this human being, this new state of humanity that is yet to come.